The departure. Admiral Elena Cheng stood at the viewport of her flagship, the Terran Ascendant, watching the iridescent glow of the Galactic Council's central world, Harmonium. The swirling colors of its atmosphere reminded her of oil on water, beautiful, but ultimately representing something unclean. After 15 decades as part of the Galactic Consortium, humanity had finally had enough. Admiral, Director Santos has begun the formal address to the Council Assembly, her aide, Lieutenant Quan, reported from behind her. Elena nodded without turning. Put it on the main screen. The viewport transformed, showing the council chamber, a vast amphitheater where 200 alien species had gathered. In the center stood a single human. Director Marcus Santos, Earth's senior representative to the Galactic Council. Despite the elaborate, ornate regalia worn by the alien dignitaries, Santos wore only the simple navy blue uniform of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. Esteemed members of the Galactic Consortium, Santos began, his voice steady and clear. For 150 years, humanity has offered its hands in friendship, its minds in service, and its hearts in commitment to the galactic community. For 150 years, we have been denied equal standing, restricted from expansion, and treated as useful tools rather than partners. The Zethra representative, Supreme Counselor Filazin, raised one of her 4 arms. Her exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber lights. Director Santos, this dramatic preamble is unnecessary. If Earth has specific grievances, the appropriate subcommittee can. There will be no subcommittee, Counselor, Santos interrupted. I'm not here to file a complaint. I am here to inform the consortium that as of 800 Universal Standard Time tomorrow, Earth and all human colonies are formally withdrawing from the Galactic Consortium. All human personnel, engineers, scientists, administrators, and military forces will return to human space within 30 days. The chamber erupted. Elena watched as representatives from dozens of worlds shouted, gestured, and flashed bioluminescent patterns of alarm. The Mexoru Prime Minister, Olax, a being resembling a massive jellyfish suspended in a hovering tank, pulsed forward. This is preposterous. You cannot simply withdraw. The Charter of Joining clearly states. The Charter also guarantees equal treatment and technological sovereignty to all member species, Santos countered. Promises the consortium has broken repeatedly. The Expansion Restrictions Act of 2298 alone violated 16 separate provisions. First Speaker Corvash of the Brachian, Dominate rose to his full 3-meter height, mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was amusement. Let them go, he said, his translator rendering his clicks into calm, measured speech. Humans occupy only 27 systems. Their contribution to the consortium, while useful in certain specialized areas, is hardly essential. Elena felt her jaw tighten at the dismissal. This was exactly what Earth Command had anticipated, the arrogance of species who had been spacefaring when humans were still fighting with swords. Santos smiled thinly. As you wish, First Speaker. We'll see how non-essential we are soon enough. The broadcast cut as Santos turned to leave the chamber. Elena switched the viewport back to the external view and turned to her command staff. Begin the countdown. Alert all human personnel across consortium space. Operation Exodus is now active. On the consortium capital world of Harmonium, Zethra engineer Liravin stared at the notification on her terminal with growing concern. As Chief Infrastructure Coordinator for the Central Nexus, she oversaw the planet's integrated network systems, from atmospheric regulation to waste reclamation to public transportation. And now, according to her screen, 78% of her human technicians had filed immediate departure notifications. This cannot be correct. She chittered to her assistant. Contact human resources immediately. Her assistant returned moments later, his exoskeleton plates tight with stress. It's not just our department, Chief. All human personnel across all departments are processing departure forms. The spaceports are already seeing increased activity. Liravin's antennae twitched nervously. But the adaptation algorithms for the central power grid, the humans designed those. The atmospheric balancers use human interface protocols. They're leaving, her assistant said simply. They can't just leave. Our systems are integrated. Her voice rose in pitch as the implications began to sink in. They're not just leaving Harmonium, her assistant added. Reports indicate they're leaving everywhere, every consortium world, every station, every outpost. Lyra Vin rushed to her terminal and pulled up the maintenance schedules. There were 17 critical systems due for human specialist intervention in the next cycle alone. Without them, she opened an emergency channel to the Zethra Council representative. Captain Maya Rodriguez supervised as her crew loaded the last of the equipment onto the transport shuttle. The Arcturus Gateway Station had been humanity's first major collaborative project with the consortium, a massive jump gate that had connected Earth to the Galactic Transportation Network. For 70 years, humans had maintained it, upgraded it, and kept it functioning at 99.8% efficiency. That's the last of the diagnostic equipment, Captain, her chief engineer reported. What about the maintenance protocols? Maya asked. As instructed, we've left basic operational manuals. The interface is set to the simplest possible configuration. He couldn't help the slight smile that crept across his face. Of course, we've removed all the custom modifications, automated repair systems, and predictive maintenance algorithms. Maya nodded. And the staff. All human personnel are accounted for and ready for departure. She looked around the control center one last time. It seemed eerily empty with only the Mexori staff remaining, floating in their environment suits, their tentacles waving in apparent agitation as they examined consoles they'd never had to operate before. Station Administrator Gelax approached, his translucent body pulsing with blue stress patterns. Captain Rodriguez, I must protest this hasty departure. Our technical staff requires at least a transition period to understand these systems fully. Maya kept her expression neutral. Administrator, we're following the withdrawal protocol established by Earth Command. All basic operational guidance has been provided. Basic guidance is insufficient. The gateway connects 17 critical trade routes. We need your specialist teams. I understand your concern, Administrator. However, for decades, your government has classified gateway technology as routine infrastructure whenever humans requested expanded roles or knowledge sharing. According to your own classification, this technology should be easily maintained by any consortium species. Gelex's tentacles rippled in what she recognized as indignation. That was administrative terminology. Everyone understands humans have particular aptitude for gateway maintenance. Then perhaps that aptitude should have been respected and compensated accordingly, Maya replied calmly. Shuttle departure in 20 minutes, Administrator. I suggest your staff begin reviewing the manuals we've provided. As she walked away, her comm unit buzzed. It was a priority message from Earth Command. The Consortium Council had just passed an emergency measure prohibiting the departure of critical infrastructure personnel from consortium facilities. Too late. Operation Exodus was already 40% complete. 3 weeks after humanity's departure announcement, First Speaker Corvash of the Brachian, Dominate stalked into the emergency session of the Consortium Inner Council, his usually immaculate carapace dull with stress. The Rameri sector gateway has collapsed, he announced without preamble. 3 major trade routes are now severed. Supreme Counselor Thalazin of the Zethra clicked her mandibles anxiously. That's the 4th gateway failure this week. The Zethra Collective has lost contact with 6 of our outer colonies. Around the table, representatives from the 12 most powerful consortium species shared similar reports. The Mexori Prime Minister's skin had turned a sickly pale blue. Power fluctuations are affecting 63 major consortium worlds, he reported. My own homeworld has lost 30% of its atmospheric regulation capacity. First Speaker Corvash slammed one clawed appendage on the table. How is this possible? Humans occupied only a small fraction of consortium space. An aide approached and whispered something to Thalazin. Her antennae drooped visibly. The Harmonium Central Data Repository has just experienced a cascading failure, she announced. Records dating back 7,000 cycles are inaccessible. This is deliberate sabotage, Corvash declared, rising to his full height. The Atraxian observer, a being composed of swirling vapor contained within a levitating shell, pulsed forward. As a species that had achieved spaceflight before any other in the room, the Atraxians were respected for their perspective. Not sabotage, the observer's melodic voice corrected. Absence. Our preliminary analysis indicates no malicious code or destructive actions. Systems are failing because the humans who designed and maintained them are no longer present. That's impossible, Corvash insisted. No single species could be so integral to consortium infrastructure. The observer's vapor form swirled more rapidly, the equivalent of a sigh. We have underestimated them, as we have from the beginning. Humans possess a unique approach to systems integration, one we find unintuitive. Where we build systems stable and unchanging, they build adaptive ones. Where we create specialized tools for specialized tasks, they create flexible platforms that serve multiple functions. Then we must compel their return, Corvash declared. The Brachian fleet would likely be ineffective, the observer interrupted. Our intelligence indicates that human space is now heavily fortified. More importantly, even if we could force their return, we could not force their cooperation. Silence fell over the council chamber. Then what do you suggest? Thalazin asked. We must negotiate, the observer replied simply. And this time, we must be prepared to offer true partnership. The consequences. General Zhang Wei of the Earth Defense Force stood on the bridge of the EDF flagship Defender, observing the massive construction project unfolding before him. The New Horizon Station, humanity's answer to the consortium's gateway network, was taking shape at the edge of the Ta-CD system. Unlike the consortium's gateways, which required constant maintenance and adjustment, the New Horizon was being built with autonomous repair systems and adaptive algorithms. It would be the first node in a transportation network built on human terms. Incoming transmission from the Diplomatic Corps, General, his communications officer reported. The main view screen activated to show the face of Director Santos. General, we've received 17 formal requests for dialogue from consortium members in the past 24 hours, Santos reported, looking tired but satisfied. The Mexore Prime Minister is personally requesting emergency technical assistance for their homeworld's life support systems. Zhang nodded. Have they acknowledged our conditions? Not yet. They're still operating under the assumption that we can be coaxed back into the old arrangement. The Zethera have offered us a seat on a special advisory council. Santos couldn't keep the disdain from his voice. And Earth's response. The standard message. We welcome dialogue with any species prepared to engage with humanity as equals in the Terran Alliance. Full technological exchange, mutual defense, and open access to the New Horizon network in exchange for fair trade agreements. Zhang turned as his tactical officer approached with a datapad. Sir, we're detecting multiple Brachian warships entering the Proxima system, she reported. They're on course for the human colony on Proxima Centauri II. Zhang's expression hardened. It seems First Speaker Corvash has decided on a more direct approach. Alert Defense Fleet Sigma. I want them at Proxima within the hour. Santos frowned from the view screen. The Diplomatic Corps hasn't received any declaration of hostile intent. I doubt we'll get one, Zhang replied. This will be framed as a protective action or security measure. Activate protocol demonstration. First Speaker Corvash stood on the command deck of the Brachian dreadnought Inevitable Dominance, watching as his battle group approached the human colony world. He had expected more resistance, human defensive installations, perhaps a few patrol ships. Instead, their sensors showed only civilian vessels and normal colonial activity. First Speaker, we're being hailed by the colonial governor, his communications officer reported. Ignore it, Corvash ordered. Establish orbit and prepare landing parties. Once we control this world, the humans will understand the consequences of defying the consortium. His tactical officer suddenly straightened, mandibles clicking rapidly in alarm. Multiple energy signatures detected, vessels emerging from behind the planet's moon. The view screen shifted to show 5 sleek vessels appearing from the dark side of Proxima Centauri I's largest moon. They were unlike any human ships Corvash had seen during humanity's time in the consortium. More angular, with visible weapon emplacements and propulsion systems that left no energy signature his sensors could detect. Brachian vessels, a calm voice announced over the communication system, somehow bypassing their blocks. This is General Zhang Wei of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered sovereign human space without authorization. You will power down weapons, reverse course, and leave this system immediately. Corvash's carapace flushed with indignation. This is First Speaker Corvash of the Brachian Dominate. By authority of the Galactic Consortium Security Council, we are here to secure this colony due to the irresponsible withdrawal of human forces from critical security positions. There was a pause before the human replied. First Speaker, humanity is no longer subject to consortium authority. I repeat, power down weapons and withdraw. Corvash signaled to his tactical officer, target their lead vessel. A demonstration of Brachian firepower should end this quickly. His flagship's main cannon charged, the energy building to levels that would cripple any known vessel. The beam lanced out toward the human fleet's lead ship and passed straight through it. Hologram. His sensor officer chittered in alarm. They're all holograms. Suddenly, the tactical display erupted with new contacts, appearing from what seemed to be empty space all around his fleet. 20 human vessels, materializing as if from nowhere. Impossible, Corvash whispered. Our sensors would have detected. First Speaker, the human general's voice came again. What you are experiencing is an adaptive cloaking field, technology we developed but were prohibited from deploying under consortium restrictions. Your sensors can't detect our ships because they operate on principles your scientists dismissed as theoretically impossible 50 years ago. Before Corvash could respond, pinpoint energy beams struck his fleet's propulsion systems with surgical precision. One by one, his ships reported drive failures. We have disabled your engines, General Zhang continued. Your life support and internal systems remain functional. We will provide coordinates for an emergency jump gate that will return you to Brachian space. Consider this demonstration complete. The communication ended, leaving Corvash staring at the view screen in stunned silence. 2 months after Operation Exodus began, Director Santos stood in the newly completed Terran Alliance chamber on Earth. Unlike the grandiose Consortium Council chamber with its hierarchical arrangement, this room was circular, with all seats at equal height and distance from the center. Representatives from 23 former consortium worlds and 15 previously independent species filled the chamber. Among them, Santos noted representatives from the Atraxians and, surprisingly, the Mexori, the first major consortium powers to open formal relations with the Terran Alliance. Welcome to the inaugural assembly of the Terran Alliance, Santos began. Each of you has chosen to engage with humanity and each other as true equals. Today marks the beginning of a new approach to galactic cooperation. The Atraxian observer's vapor form swirled gently in its containment field. The Consortium Council remains in emergency session, it reported. 17 major systems have experienced complete infrastructure collapse. The Gateway network is operating at 31% capacity. And their response to our offer of technical assistance, Santos asked. Still being debated, the observer replied, a hint of what might have been amusement in its melodic voice. The first speaker continues to advocate for military action, though his credibility has been diminished since the Proxima incident. Santos nodded, and the rest of the council. Reality is becoming difficult to ignore. The Zethra Collective has formally requested membership in the Terran Alliance, independent of the consortium's position. And Aide approached Santos with a datapad. After reading it, he addressed the chamber again. We've just received word that the consortium's central banking algorithm has failed. Interstellar trade across consortium space has ground to a halt. The Mexori representative's tentacles rippled. My government wishes to know if human specialists could be dispatched to assist with our atmospheric systems. We are prepared to offer significant concessions. Not concessions, Santos corrected gently. Equal exchange. Your species' biochemical technologies surpass our own. We propose a complete technological exchange program. Your biochemical advances for our atmospheric regulation systems. The concept of equal exchange seemed to startle the Mexori, but after a moment, its tentacles arranged into a pattern of acceptance. The consortium believed that controlling access to technology maintained their power. Santos continued, addressing the entire chamber. Humanity believes that sharing technology, ideas, and resources creates greater advancement for all. The past 2 months have demonstrated which approach leads to resilience and which to fragility. As the session continued, reports arrived from across the galaxy. More systems failing, more consortium worlds requesting assistance, and more species applying to join the Terran Alliance. Admiral Elena Cheng, now commanding the combined Terran Alliance Defense Fleet, received the notification in her private quarters aboard the Terran Ascendant. The Consortium Council, after 3 months of deteriorating conditions across their territory, had formally requested a summit with Terran Alliance leadership. She opened a secure channel to Director Santos. "They've finally broken," she said without preamble. Santos nodded on the screen. "Indeed. They're requesting we meet at a neutral location to discuss mutual cooperation opportunities. Will you go?" "Yes," Santos replied, "but not as supplicants, not as junior partners, and not as useful tools. As equals, or not at all." Elena smiled. "They still don't understand what happened, do they? How we became so essential without them noticing." The Atraxian observer explained it best. Santos said, "Where they built walls, we built bridges. Where they created closed systems, we created open networks. Where they hoarded knowledge, we shared innovations. They thought they were limiting us with their restrictions, but they were actually forcing us to become more adaptable, more ingenious." "Do you think they'll accept true partnership?" Elena asked. Santos considered this. "Some will. Others will resist until their worlds go dark. But in the end, they'll come to understand what we've known all along." "What's that?" "That the strongest galaxy isn't built on dominance, but on cooperation. Not on withholding, but on sharing. Not on rigid hierarchies, but on flexible networks." Santos smiled. It just took humanity walking away for them to see it. As the Terran Ascendant set course for Earth, Elena returned to the viewport, watching the stars. The galaxy was changing, reconfiguring itself around a new center, not a physical location, but an idea. An idea that had been born on a small blue planet, carried forward by a species that had never accepted being told what was impossible. The consortium had ignored humanity's potential for too long. Now they were facing their worst nightmare, a future where humanity didn't need them, but they desperately needed humanity.